Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a seriously fascinating concept in the world of psychology and education, David Kolb's experiential learning theory. If you've ever found yourself wondering how we take raw, messy, real-world events and actually transform them into hard, usable skills, well, you're in the right place. We're going to unpack Kolb's famous 1984 framework together and figure out the exact anatomy of an experience. So let's just start with a really fundamental question. How do we actually learn? I mean, for the longest time, traditional models totally prioritized passive memorization. We were literally told to sit down, listen, and remember. But think about your own life for a second. Do you really learn a complex new skill by just reading a manual about it? Or do you learn by rolling up your sleeves, getting a little messy, and actively doing it? And honestly, that brilliantly illustrates the core premise of our entire explainer today. Back in 1984, David Kolb hit the nail on the head when he said, "Learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience." The big takeaway here? True knowledge isn't just handed to you on a silver platter. It is actively generated and constructed through your own direct experiences, and crucially, what you do with them afterward. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. First, the power of experience. Second, the four-stage cycle. Third, the four learning styles. Fourth, putting the theory into practice. And finally, some critiques and evolutions. Let's jump right into section 1, the power of experience. Now, it's important to know that Kolb didn't just invent active learning out of thin air. Instead, he brilliantly synthesized the ideas of some major 20th century heavy hitters. He built on John Dewey's progressive philosophy, drew inspiration from Jean Piaget's cognitive development theories, and was highly influenced by Kurt Lewin's social psychology. What Kolb basically did was combine all these perspectives to create a definitive, holistic model that completely rejects rote memorization. He put real-life experience right at the absolute center of human development. Which brings us to section 2, the famous four-stage cycle. According to Kolb, learning is this idealized, continuous loop, and to truly absorb a new concept, a learner literally has to touch all four bases. You start with a concrete experience, you move to reflective observation, transition over into abstract conceptualization, and finally finish with active experimentation, which, you guessed it, loops right back around. You simply can't just skip a step and magically expect deep learning to happen. Let's anchor this with a scenario straight from our sources. Imagine you're stuck in one of those corporate team-building exercises, right? Your group is tasked with building a bridge out of some very limited resources. Step 1 is the concrete experience, or the feeling phase. You are actively immersed in the activity. You're feeling the time pressure, you're dealing with the weird team dynamics, and you're wrestling with the materials firsthand. Now, the real pivot happens here. Once the bridge is built, or let's be honest, collapses into a sad pile of sticks, you don't just move on to lunch. You enter reflective observation, the watching phase. The team actually has to step back, take a pause, and introspectively watch and discuss what succeeded and what failed. How did everyone react? What were the practical bottlenecks? Once you've observed all that, you move to stage 3, abstract conceptualization, also known as the thinking phase. This is the light bulb moment. It's where the team processes those reflections to extract the core lessons. You apply critical thinking. Maybe your team realizes, hey, dividing tasks based on our individual strengths, rather than everyone just doing everything all at once, would have resulted in a much sturdier bridge. Boom, you've just formed a new logical strategy. And that brings us to the final stage, active experimentation, or the doing phase. Let's say your team is given a brand new team-building challenge. You actively implement that new strategy of delegating by individual strengths. And by testing this new concept, you launch yourself right into a brand new concrete experience, and the whole learning cycle restarts, completely refreshed and upgraded. All right, moving to section 3, the 4 learning styles. So, while everyone goes through that cycle we just talked about, Kolb points out that we all map our preferences on 2 intersecting continuums. Here's the first sliding scale, the perception continuum. I want you to ask yourself right now, how do you prefer to take in new information? Do you lean towards feeling the concrete experience, thriving on that hands-on engagement? Or do you prefer thinking through abstract conceptualization, stepping back to analyze the logic of it all first? Next up is the processing continuum, Once you actually have that new information, how do you process it? This creates a second internal conflict. Do you naturally prefer to patiently watch through reflective observation, gaining your insights through deep contemplation? Or are you the type who prefers to immediately start doing through active experimentation, just testing ideas by jumping right into the action? So the absolutely crucial point here is that you can't be on both ends of an axis at the exact same time. You make subconscious choices, and the intersections of these two continuums create four highly distinct learning profiles: diverging, assimilating, converging, and accommodating. Let's find out which one you are. Are you diverging, meaning you feel and watch, making you highly imaginative and great at group brainstorming? Or are you assimilating? You think and watch, excelling at logical, theoretical models. Maybe you are converging. You think and do, making you a super practical, technical problem solver. Or are you accommodating? You feel and do, making you a highly adaptable, intuitive risk taker. Take a quick second and self-diagnose your learning style right now. It's kind of wild when you realize which bucket you fall into. Let's head to section 4, putting theory into practice. So what does this all mean for the real world? Well, the best training programs out there do not just cater to one single learning style. No way. They force learners to grow by actively navigating the entire loop. If you're designing training, you've got to identify your objectives, design holistic experiences covering feeling, watching, thinking, and doing, and really tailor your approach. A great coach doesn't just ask, hey, how did it go? They literally walk the learner through their non-preferred stages to build well-rounded, truly adaptive expertise. Finally, section 5, critiques and evolutions. 9, yep, you heard that right. Decades after his original 1984 model, Kolb actually expanded his whole framework. He recognized that, human beings are incredibly complex, and those original 4 styles didn't perfectly capture the borderline cases. So he bumped the model up into 9 highly nuanced stages, introducing styles like initiating, analyzing, and balancing to the mix. Now, of course, no theory is perfect. As for the academic pushback, critics argue the cycle assumes learning is overly linear, when we all know the real world is so much messier than that. Some scholars point out a lack of strong empirical support for the exact stages and note that it totally fails to deeply account for cultural differences in learning. But perhaps the biggest warning of all is that we shouldn't use this model to inflexibly pigeonhole people into single categories. It's meant to be a helpful guide, not a rigid box you're trapped in. Which leaves us with this final thought. Kold's theory proves that simply having an experience just isn't enough. It's the reflection, the conceptualization, and the experimentation that actually lock in the learning. So I leave you with this challenge. How will you actively transform your very next experience into lasting knowledge? Think about it. Keep that cycle turning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.